Welcome everyone to the Michael Granado, right? Is Granado
Yes, sir. Yep.
after party deconversion stories with Michael. Anyway, I was totally thrown for a loop because I just noticed, Mikey. I just noticed your little logo back in the little corner there, twisting around. It's the first time I even noticed that.
Real subtle, like.
I just love how you threw that in there. Anyways, welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate this.
Yeah, no worries, man. Now you are an educator of philosophy and history, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's interesting.
Yep.
That's
Ooh,
interesting.
someone I can ask. Someone I can ask all my stupid questions to.
There's no such
Bring
thing as
along.
stupid questions, Michael.
That's right.
That is not.
Just stupid people.
But stupid people don't ask good questions. We ask stupid questions. I know how this
Okay.
works.
All right.
Dumb all the
Well,
way
anyways,
down.
Anyways, Michael, what I do here is I chat with folks about how they found their way out of their religious beliefs, as you probably already know, and kind of what that led to, like how's it, with the family, the friends, that kind of thing. So kind of take us on that journey. And when I have something stupid to ask, or when he has something stupid to ask, we'll probably wave our hands or something, or just butt right in. You never know.
Just butt in. I predominantly teach high school, so I'm used to being interrupted and.
I make like paper
picked on.
airplanes and throw them toward you.
Throw them at Mikey. I'll have to separate you two. Yeah, sit on opposite sides of the classroom. Yeah.
Why can't I sit next to Neil?
No passing notes between each other, right?
Yeah, so I'll start. I teach history and philosophy and intro to religion. So I always tell my students, there's when it comes to religion, and I mean this with all due respect, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Religion deals with some of the most obscure and complicated issues and topics that human beings have ever created. So, yeah,
which includes religion.
Religion itself. So, in the spirit of being a good history teacher, I'll try to proceed chronologically, and if at any point in time you have questions, you just jump right in.
The glorious thing about this is we will never know.
I was about to say we can't fact check you on this one.
Yeah, I'm all over Google here now. Hang on.
Yeah, so on Snopes that there's no way that's true.
I appreciate a good fact checker, but yeah, I'm not famous enough to have a wiki article about me. So
who said he was good?
Not yet.
So my journey to deconversion, the process of deconversion, started much later in life for me. So I grew up in the American South, which is affectionately known as the Bible Belt, right? So I was raised predominantly by a single mother. It was kind of I had this sort of really awkward experience because, I guess a lot of people have awkward experiences in the Bible Belt.
I was an awkward kid.
Yeah. But my father's side of the family were Cuban immigrants. My mother's side of the family had lived in the South for going all the way back to the Civil War. And they were very proud to trace their heritage back to fighting on the side of the Confederacy, that sort of thing. Yeah. So then you get me, and I'm kind of in this awkward position where one side of my family's making jokes about immigrants, and the other side of my family are immigrants.
Fuck.
Yikes.
So, but I was raised by my mother, and my mother's family was from the South. My mother wasn't really religious per se, but what I tell people who aren't from the South is that religion's just kind of baked into the fabric of society.
Yep.
So even if you aren't religious, you're going to get some religious influence kind of indirectly. So where this comes into play is I was raised by my mother, and for the first 3 years of my life, we lived with my grandmother and grandfather, who helped to raise me. When I was 4 years old, my grandfather, who was basically my father, passed away from cancer.
Oh, sorry.
And yeah, it's also as a
Try not to wreck the place. Eh?
my
Tear
desk.
it up.
It's the end of the semester. My desk is an absolute mess. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I meant to give a disclaimer. My story involves a lot of loss and grief and struggle with mental illness. So if you're not in the right headspace to listen to this, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you don't, right?
Right.
So yeah, I lost my grandfather at 4 years old, and it's hard enough as an adult to understand and comprehend and wrestle with death, but as a 4-year-old kid, it was just mind-boggling. So the community that I lived in, it was a very poor, impoverished community. Like mental health and mental health awareness wasn't a thing, right?
Right.
So to cope with what I was experiencing and kind of wrestle with what I was experiencing, the only option for help that was open to my mother was the local church. So that's where she took me. I had all these questions, like why did my grandfather?
Hold on. She took you there for help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Which, we're talking about I'm the first person in my family to go to college. It's not like there were a whole lot of options and resources that she could have had. We didn't have a car until I was in like 8th grade. I could have been taken to a therapist even if she knew what therapy was, right?
Right.
But she did know that there was a local pastor, and that local pastor conducted funerals and helped people when their family members died. And so that's where we went. So a lot of the questions that I had as a child in and around the subject of death and what happens after we die and why do people die and what we're supposed to do after people die were kind of addressed in this religious context.
Right.
So inadvertently, I kind of grew closer and closer to the church shortly after my grandfather died. My grandmother died when I was 6. And that kind of got me deeper into it. And once I became a teenager, I had all these kind of philosophical questions about life, the meaning of life, the problem of evil, why do all these crap things keep happening to me and my friends? And, the neighborhood I grew up in, it was every other day somebody got arrested. There's a meth lab down the street. Somebody got shot over here. It was one of those types of, yeah.
Were you near any big cities, or were you in more like rural Georgia? Because Georgia is, if people don't know a lot about Georgia, it's a weird spot, right? Because you got Atlanta, which is like the South's New York, but then you go out 20 miles and it is just fields. Like it is, there's a very, so it's either you're in the city like Atlanta or something like that, or you're in farms, you're in farmland.
Basically. So I grew up now my whole life I've kind of bounced back and forth between Savannah and Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta's where all the jobs and opportunities are at. Like you said, outside of being a farmer, that's about your only option outside. But so I grew up on the outskirts of Savannah. For those of you not from the South, we have these things called trailer parks, which is just one trailer after another for acres and acres. In the trailer parks of Effingham County.
Isn't that where tornadoes go?
Yeah. They really like trailer parks for some reason.
They're magnetically drawn to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the type of community I came up with, and so I was kind of a naturally curious child, and so I had a lot of questions about why all these horrible things kept happening around me and to the people I loved and to my friends and all that other good stuff. And really starting in middle school and then especially in high school, I became a Christian, largely because I believed that Christianity answered a lot of these questions. And more importantly, Christianity kind of helped me to cope with the amount of pain I had that I was experiencing over the loss of my grandparents. And then when I was 13, over the loss of my father. So it was after the loss of my father that I kind of went like full send, like I'm a Christian, like this is who I am, because I remember after that going back to another local pastor asking him a whole bunch of questions. And I was actually just talking with a friend of mine that I went to theology school with, which I'll get to. But one of the books that was recommended to me by this pastor was the book of Job. You know, I had all these questions about suffering and the problem of evil.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's still probably one of my favorite books, like just period. But if you've read the book of Job, you know that there's no answers in the book of Job.
Correct.
Right. Just a bunch of folklore.
Yeah. So he gives me a copy of the Bible. He says, listen, Job's a good place to start off with. So I read the book of Job.
Yikes.
You know, of course, the story of Job is the story of this guy that loses his family, loses all of these possessions, and basically spends 40 chapters being pissed off at his friends and pissed off at God. And so for 40 chapters, I was like completely on board. I was like, yeah, this is right on, Job. Like, this is what I'm talking about. And
Job gets it.
Yeah. And then you get to the God speeches. And I'm like, okay, here's the answers, right? And God says, Job, stop whining. You're a peon. I'm God. Now, this is a horrible paraphrase, and I'm sorry to.
No, it's pretty accurate. I like it so far.
That's what he would have been like today. You know, Job, shut up, for fuck's sakes.
Stop quote tweeting me, Job.
So I still had a bunch of questions, obviously, right? Job, it helped to, as a piece of literature, I would say that Job resonated with me just in the same way that any piece of literature does. It speaks to like the basics of the human condition, the basic of the human condition being we all experience, regardless of our race, gender, sexual orientation, we're all experience suffering. It's one thing that unites us as people, right?
Yep.
And so regardless of the fact. Oh, you said, I thought you said Texas.
Oh, no.
Texas.
No, not Texas. Texas is fun, but you know.
Same thing.
So it was in high school that I started to get interested. I was like, well, you know, the Bible's great, but I need more. And so I started to get interested in theology, and then it's through theology that I found philosophy. And I've always been interested in history, like the history of the church, the history of the Bible. I did my like senior project on extra biblical sources for Jesus. Like that's the kind of like student I was.
I got a question. What did you come up with when you did that?
Yeah,
I know you hear Titus or whatever, but that was written after the fact. It was an add-on to that whole thing. So didn't they find that the ink that was used to write the short part about Jesus was actually different composition than the original ink?
That I'm not sure of.
Yes, I will say it.
There you go.
I made it up,
it was a type of ink that wasn't even around when they originally wrote it. It was a newer kind of ink or something. I remember hearing that somewhere, but I can't remember where the hell.
It was it was written in Bic pen. It's like, no, wait a minute. I would know that pen anywhere.
It's a Bic feather pen.
Yeah.
I will say, because I hear this sometimes when I listen to. Occasionally, I participate in debates against Christians, Christian apologists, and stuff like that. One of the common objections that I hear brought up by the atheist community is that Jesus didn't exist, right? Or that Jesus was a copy of a Roman myth or a Greek myth or an Egyptian myth, or take your pick.
Well, there were elements, I guess, that they used for the character of him.
Yeah.
He was like a Voltron of everybody else's like fucking stories.
I'll say that now ancient history is not my forte. I specialize in 20th century modern history. But historical consensus is something I really value. Most scholars of Christianity, regardless of whether or not they're Christian or not, the historical consensus is that Jesus was a real person. You don't have to believe. That doesn't mean that it automatically necessitates as being true the things that he said, but
or all the stuff he did in the Bible,
right?
That stuff could have just been added on but it was all based on some itinerant whack job rabbi or something.
Yeah, so we have the biblical sources themselves, the Gospels specifically. There's some extra biblical stuff that comes around a little bit later. Josephus, there's some Roman accounts about early Christian activity, some of which indirectly mention Jesus. But the level of historical evidence that we have about the New Testament and about early Christians is about as good as you're going to get in the ancient world for proving that somebody existed. But to do a roundabout answer to your question. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, not my forte, but I just hear that floating around a lot in atheist communities. There are a handful of scholars that will talk about like the Jesus myth, but the idea that was put forward by the Jesus Seminar in the early 2000s is largely kind of faded out of popularity with scholars. So it's not a very strong historical argument. And much like scientific consensus, if you're not a first century scholar, your best bet is just to go with the consensus.
Right, which I would recommend anyone do it
Right.
in any case if they're not an expert in the field, right?
Yeah. So I can't remember us high school, right?
Yes.
Am I talking too fast? I'm trying to get through.
You're
the
fine.
parts.
Hey man, this is your show, man. We're just here to hang out.
If you get going really, really fast, I'll be like, whoa, hey, rein that in.
Gotcha.
We are smart. SMRT. Slow it down.
We got Deep Drinks podcast stopping in.
Oh yeah, David. Yeah. Okay.
David,
Yeah. David's good stuff. Hey, David.
He says you're a beast, though. I don't know. You're gonna have to punch him or something later.
Shown
he's
here.
Australian. I'm afraid of Australians. That's right.
Oh,
That beast. I'll take.
Well, yeah, because they have all those dangerous animals they can bring.
Yeah,
in,
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. My wife and I recently were trying to decide where to go on vacation. She suggested Australia. I said, well, I could go down there and see David, but I don't think I will.
Yeah, but never mind. AKA fuck
Intellectual
that.
beast. Oh, there you go. He says you're an intellectual beast.
There we go.
How you doing, David?
So the blue fur beast. Gotcha.
Yeah. The scientist. My favorite character was always Nightcrawler, though. So.
Hell yeah, it was because he was the fucking coolest.
Definitely.
Fucking so cool.
Nightcrawler and Colossus. Yeah.
Colossus too. Yeah. Mine was always a Wolverine. I liked when they first flipped to the new X-Men and they had all the new characters. And of course, Thunderbird died like right away. Yeah, I think he was killed on Krakoa, wasn't he? When they rescue Cyclops and Jean and everybody. And then they had Sunfire, the Japanese guy.
Yes.
Sunfire, who's like, I don't want to be a part of your fucking team. All right, there, Kimasabi or whatever the hell your name is.
He's out of there.
That's totally wrong language. What the hell am I saying?
That's
it, folks. I've had a little too much of the Mio.
You're gonna have to switch you back over the beer. We can't understand you.
I don't. Well, now that Nidamos is in the chat, I'm just gonna show real quick. Nidamos, all those minifigs I was talking about. Well, I found a good deal on ones that I was looking for. So it's the SR-71 Blackbird X-Men.
Right.
It's got the Logan there, and it's got the Magneto, and it's got the Storm and everything. So you don't need to bring it. But if you have a MODOK or an like a MODOK or an extra, was General Grievous, is that his name? The guy with 4 arms and 4 lightsabers.
Yes. Yeah, Star Wars. Yeah.
I need one of those. So anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
General Grievous.
Now I'm playing the X-Men intro. Like we used to pretend to be X-Men on, like, we would, for PE, we would race to the monkey bars, and the rule was whoever got there first got to pick what X-Men they were going to be.
Awesome.
And I'm a very slow person, so I was always last. And so,
come on, Cyclops. No one likes Cyclops.
Come on, Cypher.
So yeah, that's what. So like my recourse, because I was like thinking like, okay, they already picked all my favorites. You remember Morph?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I picked Morph one day, and he can like change into any of them, and then they like got
Which
real
is
mad at
actually
that.
pretty fucking cool.
Right. He's a little OP, but
Right.
yeah. So high school, I was like all in, like this is who I am.
Oh, sorry, I just had
He's
a
in a
little
shame
itch to
too.
scratch there.
Yeah,
Don't bring those on the plane, Neil. You're not gonna make it here.
Why? How do you think I got him here?
They don't play that shit down here. I'm just saying. I don't have bail money.
Nova Scotia? Who the fuck in Nova Scotia is phoning me?
It's Apologia.
Hang on one sec, guys.
Yeah.
He's over here. What's up, bro?
Forget it. It's gone.
Got a new animation coming out. Just wanted to know. Okay, we're going to pick up.
Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
I can't answer it. It's gone.
No worries.
Call
So
him
yeah,
back.
I was all in high school. In high school I was debating whether or not I was going to go into the ministry, or whether or not I was going to be a teacher. I spoke with the local pastor again. He advised me that I should go to college, which is the first time anybody had ever told me that, and B,
especially a pastor.
Right. I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. And
I'll be honest, dude. Most of the people that I've spoken to say that those dominoes really started falling when they hit the college level.
Yeah. So that was kind of my experience too. So he encouraged me to go to college because in the Methodist church, which was the church I was going to at the time, if you wanted to be a pastor, it required a master's degree. So you had to get a BA first. So he said it didn't really matter what I chose for my undergraduate. And so I chose philosophy because that's what I was most interested in. And that's kind of where I got more into the academic side of things. That's where I really started to. My BA is kind of in the general history of philosophy. So I took classes in ancient Greek philosophy, modern philosophy, analytic philosophy, philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, all that good jazz. But for the most part, I was in college. I was a Christian, but I was growing more and more as a liberal, what I quote unquote liberal Christian. This kind of reached its climax when I went to theology school. When I went to theology school in 2012, and in the Methodist Church, the big debate that was happening at the time was around gay rights, right? Mm-hmm. And so I chose to go to Emory University, which, for those of people who don't know, is kind of like the bastion of liberal theology in the South. So at Emory, like a large percentage of my classmates were LGBT, a lot of whom were going into the ministry. It was a very open and accepting atmosphere. But of course, they were getting a lot of pushback from, like you said before, Mikey, outside of Atlanta, you hit farmland really quick. Those people going to the Methodist churches out in the farm aren't interested in having a gay pastor, right? So there was a lot of debates at that time over whether or not Methodist pastors would eventually marry gay couples, whether or not gay people themselves should be pastors. And that's kind of what started, not really doubt, but that's kind of what started to drive a wedge between me and organized religion, right? Because what I was seeing from the church were debates over whether or not these people that I was really close with, that I had dinner with on a regular basis, whether or not they should be recognized in the same way as me. And that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Like, what about, like, because that was something huge for me too. Was it like the you're sitting there and then you hear the sermon and you just kind of like groan to yourself, or is it just like stuff people are posting online? Because that seriously bothered me, especially when I have gay family members.
Right.
And then I'm hearing the F-bomb in like Sunday school, and like, you know what I'm saying? And then like at the dinner after church or whatever, they're like, well, you know, those F words are trying to take over this and this. And it's just like, yo.
Right.
What happened?
Trying to take over.
Right.
Yeah.
They're trying to get married to each other and not me. It's like, yeah, that's the point. But
So
Yeah.
like that I would have been able to like compartmentalize, because growing up in the South, I used to hear that sort of thing about minorities all the time
Right.
by people in the church. Right.
yeah,
So even though, desegregation of churches happened back in the 60s, but in the Methodist Church, especially in the South, you had African American Methodist churches,
right.
white Methodist churches, Korean Methodist churches, Hispanic Methodist. Like it was very racially, still is, right?
Yeah.
Um, One of my
In some
pastors,
places, for sure.
Georgia.
I'm not saying that there's certain United Methodist groups in Illinois that are just fronts for clans, but they have no black members. They all ride motorcycles, and there's a lot of Confederate flag waving. So they use the auspices of that church and of the Methodist methodology. Listen to me. The Methodist practices, but they're just fundamental Christians who hate everybody. And they're like, this is a home for me.
Right. And like that I could separate because, I was talking with African American pastors and I was attending those churches, and like I could talk with them and say, well, like these other churches are misguided, yada yada. It was from the congregation. What I was seeing with debates and arguments about gay marriage was coming top down.
Right.
Like it wasn't the congregants who were, I mean, they were divided about this, but there was a debate within the church itself over whether or not we should recognize gay marriage. And so like that, I was like, oh, like that was bad.
Well, what I don't, I've never understood the whole thing. It's like, isn't marriage, everyone can get married? You would think? You think anyone who wants to get married should be able to get married, right? It's not one of our rights to be able to get married.
The problem,
why is it not one of their rights?
You know what their problem is, Neil? They're having babies out of wedlock. What the hell do you mean they're trying to get married and have two moms? No, that wasn't what I was talking about. It's like you told them to get married. They got married. And now you fucking
Hello, heathen queen. It's just, if people say, gay rights. Well, they're human rights.
Right.
At least they fucking should be. You shouldn't even need the title gay rights. They should be, these people also have human rights. Or not these people. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, see, when
gay
you
people
say like
have human rights.
You say it like that, Neil, and people are going to start thinking the gays are human. You're treating them like human beings. That doesn't comport with the way that the American populace votes, unfortunately.
And this was a debate that a lot of people my age that was going to college, especially going to seminary at that time, were like really familiar with. And it highlighted some of the other aspects of Christianity that at the time I was growing increasingly uncomfortable with. Because what the debates about gay rights hinged on, for the most part, depended upon how you were going to interpret the Bible. And for a lot of Christians, especially in the American South, there's this idea of biblical inerrancy, which is the belief that the Bible is the inherent, inspired word of God. And so they would go back to books like Genesis and say, well, in Genesis, it's Adam and Eve that enter into the marriage contract by suggesting that same gender loving people could also enter into the marriage contract is to go against the word of God, right?
Right.
And so not only did this like kind of drive a wedge between me and organized religion, but it also really increasingly started to get me to ask these really basic questions about how I view it and understood the Bible. And so what happened over the course of my time in theology school is that I slowly came to accept a more and more loose definition and understanding of biblical authority. Right. So like when I entered in theology school, I was what a lot of people would call like an old earth creationist. When I left theology school, I fully accepted evolution. I believe that, what you have to accept what science says, and that religion has to accommodate what science says. That
It's not really what science says, though. It's what science has been able to demonstrate.
Right. And with respect to human rights, the Bible, we had to recognize the historical situation that the Bible was written in.
Historical.
Yeah. Well, with things like gay marriage, a lot of the text of the New Testament where Paul demeans same-sex relationships between men, a lot of the Christians I was going to school with would say, like, yeah, Paul said that. We're not going to deny that, but we're going to say, like, Paul, we disagree with you. And that was okay, right? Because it's Paul, not Jesus type thing.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I was at. By the time I left theology school, my faith had gotten to the point where if you were to ask me if I believed in Christianity, I would say that kind of culturally and maybe a little intellectually, I was a Christian, but I wasn't really a practicing Christian. I wasn't like praying on a regular basis. I wasn't attending Sunday service. I wasn't, actively involved in my local congregation. It was kind of a slow, kind of petering, burning out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the icing on the shit cake, so to speak, was about 6 years ago. After my mother passed, I kind of did like an honest assessment. I was still calling myself a Christian at that point. And after that happened, I just thought, like, I'm a Christian just because I'm holding on to it for whatever reason. I don't feel a need to hold on to this anymore.
Right.
Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. Ontologically, I don't believe in like the supernatural. I'm not holding to some sort of belief in a divine power. It was just kind of loosely like, I think the universe fills me with the divine sense of awe, and I just kind of gave that up too.
Nothing wrong with saying that either, if you think think about it. I mean, the universe fills you with the divine sense of awe, meaning, because it's pretty fucking amazing, and it's so far out of my capability to know everything about it that it's mind bending. So sure. Yeah, you could say that for sure, but of course we don't really mean that there's a deity at all behind it or divinity at all behind it, but you could say that for sure, just because of the awe that it inspires in people, or that it instills in people. I mean, so
yeah,
I mean, shit. Let's face it, there's a bazillion galaxies out there. Right? So
it is awe-inspiring. I'm not trying to say like I don't still like feel small when I look up at the night sky or stand beside an ocean, for sure. Right.
I think small's too big a word.
Yeah.
It's more like minuscule.
So there was that's kind of like the practical aspect of what like led me away from faith. Was my experience in theology school, followed shortly thereafter by the passing of my mother. But there were also some intellectual challenges and obstacles I faced, that I was facing consistently in the research I was doing, that also kind of led me down this path. One was an absolutely fantastic biology instructor that I had as an undergraduate. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned this before, but going into college, I was a creationist. I was talking with, I think it was David. When I was in high school, was a year or two after, and I'm dating myself a little bit here, was a year or two after the Supreme Court decision that struck down the Teach the Controversy bill. I don't know if you're familiar with that, about creation and
creationism in classes and stuff. Yeah.
So my high school biology teacher, when it was time to teach evolution, this was like the year that trial was happening, said, I don't want to lose my job. You can read about evolution in the textbook if you want to. but I want to stay employed. And so he didn't teach us. Like he just backed away. He said, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, right?
Now, thinking back, do you think he would have lost his job if he had taught it?
It was a real hot button topic. And this was,
Evolution?
again, this is the Deep South. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was 2003. I think that bill was passed in 2004, 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was on the tip of everybody's mind. Like there's newspaper articles running about it, that sort of thing. But I had a very approachable evolutionary biology instructor in college. I went to college at Georgia Southern, which is, yeah.
You wouldn't be the only one doing that. It's happened to me before. People have crossed the street when they see me coming down.
You look like a friendly guy.
There's just not enough space. Neil is just this big mountain of a man with a bandana. He's a mountain with a bandana on top. They had to cross. It's like 6'13".
Well, I've told the story before where I was dating a girl whose roommate said, "Oh, I remember you. I saw you coming down the street and I crossed the street." And she goes, "And you know what? I never would have done that because now I know you." So,
Big
you
teddy
know,
bear, right?
Yeah.
A big
Yeah,
soft.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had this college instructor who recognized the cultural aspect of being an evolutionary biology teacher in the American South. And so this was like an intro to biology required for every entering college freshman. And he said, the first day of class, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about evolution. Bring whatever questions you have, bring whatever resources you have. You can bring in your local pastor. You can bring in your creationist textbook. Like we're gonna hammer this thing out. Like come ready because I'm gonna bring it next time we have class. And we had some
Good thing I don't have any class.
We had some like knockdown dragouts. Like what about this? What about that? And he just went through it, just bam, 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 bam. And I was like,
Nice.
whoa, like this guy really, and he was super nice about it, like very understanding. He wasn't like an ass about it or anything. So that was when I was like, well, you know, maybe I can't take the Bible like super literally.
Maybe.
Maybe there's something to this evolution thing, right?
Because, you know, snakes talk and shit. So.
And so,
oh God, don't bring in talking snakes.
Motherfucking talking snakes on the motherfucking talking plate.
Someone meme that right now. Tons of my IQ. I know you're out there. Someone meme that.
I don't think either one of them are in the chat at the moment.
I'm sick of these motherfucking talking snakes on this motherfucking talking plane. So what was that? Isn't there movie planes where the planes talk? Yeah, like cars.
Yeah.
JJ the jet
world.
plane.
It's
Put
the
him
same
on
world.
Put him on JJ the jet plane. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Must be done.
So yeah, so that was a big kind of pivotal moment for me. And then the other intellectual thing is when I started my graduate school programs, I specialize, the area of history I specialize is the history of science. And
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's specifically, I like to look at areas where science and religion and science and philosophy meet. So my first graduate degree, what I was looking at is early modern history and the ways in which Newtonian physics changed people's conception and understanding of God. Specifically, I was looking at Newton got into a big debate with a German philosopher named Leibniz. Leibniz really ahead of his time. He had some pretty far out there ideas, but Leibniz, one of the first people to recognize that the type of relativity of motion that Galileo was talking about in the 15th century carried kind of radical implications if we put it within a Newtonian context. And eventually we get like extreme relativity much later by Einstein, but Leibniz was one of the first to recognize that. But what's interesting about the Newton-Leibniz correspondence, if you read it, is that most of their conversations, they start off talking about physics, but from there it quickly shifts to talking about God. And Newton had a lot of really strange, well, Newton was a really weird guy. And he had a lot of really weird beliefs about God. And I thought that was super interesting. And so I did a lot of research there.
Right.
I tell my high school students love this stuff. So I'll tell you all some fun facts about, because I got to respect
Yes.
how weird Newton was. So now, absolutely brilliant, like no doubt about it. He had discovered and written out the theory of gravity by the time he was 25. That by itself, you gotta pay homage to the guy.
Yep, pretty insane.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely crazy. He practically invented calculus. Leibniz also invented calculus at roughly the same time, and Newton thought that he was using paranormal abilities to spy on him. Like, this is the type of guy that because he was convinced that Leibniz wasn't smart enough to convince calculus, only he was. But what
birds aren't real, they're cameras, obviously.
He was a really big, like, Newton would have been a dyed-in-the-wool conspiracy theorist. Like,
oh no, 100%. He would have been Alex Jones.
A smart version of Alex Jones.
Oh no, if Dr. Oz and Alex Jones had a baby.
No, don't even.
It was Isaac Newton in a time machine.
Let's not taint Newton any further, please.
So yeah, like Newton he'd written his Principia by the time he was 25, but he dedicated the rest of his life to exploring and understanding what he thought were secret codes that were hidden in the Hebrew Bible and in the New Testament. He was really big into alchemy. And another thing, there's a lot. So when he was in college, he wrote a letter to the dean of, I think he went to Oxford. I could be mistaken about that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Oxford. He wrote a letter to the dean of Oxford because Newton's in his early 20s. He's working like 16 hours a day, busting out these like mathematics equations. But he hears across the street all of his fellow students in a local tavern like partying it up, right? And so he writes a letter to his local dean saying why college students shouldn't drink. He writes like a manifesto.
So we had an interesting question from Monsieur. Are things like calculus and trigonometry discovered or invented? It's kind of a combo. I mean, the math has always been there. We invented ways to do it, or
to describe
understand it, or use it, or whatever you want. So it's kind of a bit of both.
Yeah, that's a big question in the philosophy of mathematics. I would say that I don't want to throw out too much jargon.
We're nerds around here, so go for it.
In philosophical lingo, I'm a structural realist. So I don't believe that math has an ontology, right? So ontology is the study of being, the study of existence, right? So like my car is parked outside, my car exists, right? I don't believe that math exists in the same way that my car does. So
no,
I would,
of course not. But because math isn't until we write it down, it's not like a physical thing, right?
Right.
But it's there, and we just found ways to understand it and came up with formulae and all sorts of stuff to understand because it's there. We just needed ways to deal with it, I guess you could say. So we invented calculus and trigonometry and algebra and geometry or whatever.
So Neil, I think you'd be a structural realist as well if I prodded you a little bit.
Probably.
But yeah, it exists in the same way that language exists. And on the one hand, language isn't real in the sense that the Coke can's real, but language is real in the sense that it's the bedrock and foundation of just about everything we do on a regular basis. Right.
Doesn't have to be spoken. You can do pictures, you can do symbols, you can do deaf people prove that, right? Where they talk with the symbols and hand signals, stuff like that, right? So
yeah. So the structure that's created by our mathematical descriptions is real in the same way that the linguistic structure created by like the U.S. legal system is real.
Right.
Is what my answer to that very convoluted answer to that question would be. But yeah, I spent a while looking at Newton and the ways in which Newtonian physics changed how we thought about God, because what happens after Newton is that we start to think less and less of the divine or God as a causal influence on reality, and more as what starts to happen is this growing separation between the supernatural world, what God's up to and what God's doing, and the natural world. Because the big thing about Newtonian physics is that eventually what happens is that there's less and less of a place for any sort of supernatural intervention.
Right. The gap gets smaller and smaller.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and then
that's why I can now buy those little tiny containers of God putty. Those little teeny cracks, you can put it in there now.
Well, if you need to fix up anything, it helps.
It works on hanging posters too, by the way. But so does toothpaste, if you really want to know. And I know that because we did that in Israel. The Israeli toothpaste is great for tacking up posters.
Yo, can I just get that Van Halen poster and 47 tubes of toothpaste? Nothing. Like, I'm looking at if I'm the cashier, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with kids today? What the hell is wrong with them? They're all thinking they can just brush their teeth all day.
And stare at a poster.
Flossing with the poster right here.
Might as well jump. Sorry.
So this is one of the arguments that when I argue with apologists that I attempt to put forward, but as you can tell, I'm a little long-winded, so I don't always get to spell it out. But so like with Newton in his Principias, or in his Optics, there is a segment where he talks about Newton had a really difficult time describing the orbit of Mercury specifically, because Mercury was really erratic.
Yes.
And it didn't really abide by the sort of calculations that Newton was able to provide. And so Newton's solution to this was that the
Mercury doesn't exist.
All right, it ain't a much better solution. So
it's inside the dome.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So his solution was that we live in this mechanical universe that obeys the laws of physics, a very deterministic universe that obeys the laws of physics to a T, and that eventually what happens is every once in a while, God has to come in, rearrange the puzzles a little bit, and then he steps back.
He goes, oh, Venus, you're misbehaving. Boop.
Right.
That's better. Yeah.
Right. But what started to happen after Newton is that people started to do more and more precise. Oh God.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, that's Ptolemaic.
I was about to say, I think that's Tom.
Yes.
Ptolemaic, yes. So what started happening after? Well, Copernicus did away with the Ptolemaic system, and modern astrology is based off the Ptolemaic system. So modern astrology is based on a system of science that's outdated by about 500 years.
I use the term science loosely.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's the God, it was something about Mars being a retrograde, and there was somebody who said like there was all these like ellipses, or it was something all the way down. There's like a phrase for that. You know,
well, there's the turtles all the way down.
Yeah, but it was like it was after Ptolemy, I think, because they were trying to explain all the orbits, and someone had such a ridiculous form of doing it, and that became the joke, and I can't remember the joke, so I'll just be Googling.
No, you're right. It's if you look at like the Ptolemaic maps that were created, like so Copernicus is writing 15th century. If you look at like the Ptolemaic maps of the 14th century and you look at the orbit of Mars, it's just like circle within a circle within a circle within a,
Yeah.
like, it's ridiculous. And the beauty of the Copernican system is Copernicus says, well, if you put the sun at the center, you can do away with all these.
Right.
Which
Right.
really simplified it, right?
What was that? Shitty ellipses hypothesis.
Yeah, that'll get it.
We'll see.
Let me know what you find. Yeah.
It just says shoveling shit as the first one, and I'm fucking stun locked. I can't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, but so astronomy gets much more and more precise after Newton, and eventually what happens come 17th, 18th century is we figured out that with growing telescope technology that our measurements got more and more precise. Eventually we realized that Newton's problem wasn't really a problem. The same thing kind of happens with the theory of biological evolution in the 19th century, which is also what I spent some time studying. But yeah, my general argument here is an argument from naturalism, is what I like to put forward, in a position called provisional naturalism. And the simplest way to put this is, if you look at like the history of science, and I've spent a lot of time looking at the history of science, you have two general types of explanations: naturalistic explanations, which seek to explain the world through natural causes and appeals to natural phenomenon, and supernatural explanations, which seek to explain the world through appeals to supernatural agency. What we've seen over the course of that history, if you're kind of comparing the two together, which is more popular, which has been more successful, which is increasingly accepted by all of the scientific disciplines.
How are you defining success?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would define success by predictability, whether or not the paradigm has made successful theory predictions, what Karl Popper calls falsifiability,
Right.
how fruitful the research program is. Like, does this theory make more research questions to answer and to seek after? And the body of scholarship and the body of peer review that forms around that community. That's how I would say it's successful.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
How much money does it make at the box office on opening week? How many Volvos can fit on top of it? These are all good ways of figuring it out.
Volvos, that came out of nowhere.
You can go with Michael's answer if you want to, though. That's all right.
Right.
That's right. Just ignore me.
That's fine. Or his, you know.
Where did Vulcan come from? Sinister Purpose, isn't that from Star Trek, right? Vulcan? No?
Vulcan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not sure.
Where did Vulcan come from? Was that
that's what they were I think that's what they were calling Mercury at first.
Right? No.
Whoa, no.
Or Venus was Vulcan. Let me see.
How many vulvas can fit on top of it?
Not gonna be canceled. No. I'm not answering that.
If you must know.
Lots.
42.
42.
Oh man.
Okay, we're just starting to mix up our sci-fi all over the place here, people.
Welcome to my brain.
Yeah, so that was one of the intellectual obstacles. I was very curious why there wasn't strong supernatural explanations. If we hold that there's a God and that this God like intervenes in the universe at a regular basis, then it would stand to reason that we would at least see some area where that intervention is like consistent that we could point to. And eventually it doesn't. Right. Which leads me to say, like, well, either God exists and just doesn't care about any of us, in which case, what's the point in believing in that?
Yeah, why worship him, right?
Yeah. Or just God just doesn't exist. Right.
That's probably more likely. Oh, that's right. That's right. Vulcan was a proposed planet to explain the orbits of Mercury, which we now know didn't need an extra planet. We now know why. But sure. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Thank you, Porpoise.
Thanks, SP.
Well, before we wrap up the interview, Michael, how are things like with your family members and stuff like that? Have any of them are they upset with you? Are they...
Yeah.
They still talk to you? Like, do you have decent relationships? That kind of thing.
I don't really have decent relationships with my family, but it has very little to do with religion.
Okay. It's a whole other ball of wax.
How much do you want to talk about trauma? No.
Buckle up, everybody.
I've never really had that issue. After the death of my mother, I kind of grew further and further apart from her side of the family, and my father's side of the family was just kind of to put it politely, just kind of a train wreck. So already didn't have, little distance from
best
there.
Relationships. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My grandfather was a wonderful person, but he also passed away. So
yeah.
And what can people... I have a link to your YouTube channel, by the way, down below. Also your Twitter, so people can stalk you there.
Yeah.
But what can folks look forward to on your channel?
Yeah, so I've recently started interviewing people, mostly academics. Most of my content is educational related. No, I've interviewed other YouTubers too, so I was actually going to ask y'all if y'all would like to.
Yeah, I ain't no damn near fucking inner, what do they call them? Smart people?
I'm sorry, Neil, did you get off from the lab early today? The lab you work at?
I know, shut up.
Yeah, aren't you an atomic scientist or something like that?
Fucking chemist.
No. Atoms are too small. I can't find them.
They don't exist.
I'm
a hack chemist, Mikey. I'm not a real chemist.
Well, yeah, I got some interviews, and occasionally, if you're interested in this sort of thing, if you want flashbacks to high school history, I put up some of my lectures and stuff. So, if you want to go learn about, I put one out not too long ago about the philosophy of science. Got one before that on the 13th and 14th Amendment, the history of that. Yeah, World War I, World War II, all that fun stuff.
Cool. Right on.
I only had like 2 or 3 cool history teachers who were like, yo, guys, check this out. Today we're talking about this thing, gonna blow your fucking mind. You know what I mean? Like, they had like that kind of, I got it. I've been itching to tell you guys about this. Like, I know you guys like that last thing, but you're really gonna like. And then you get the guy. All right, what it was today? Monday?
Bueller.
All right, chapter 4.
Bueller.
Open that up, and y'all are gonna read that chapter. Worksheets are up here. You can get them now if you want. And then just
I'm gonna go read my penthouse.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not trying to
read my penthouse.
I hate to throw any educator under the bus, but it's a crappy history teacher in high school that made me think. This was kind of an arrogant thought, but I was a teenager. I could probably do that better than him.
You probably could at that age.
Because it was literally, and he was a coach, so go figure. But
they're always a coach.
They are.
Just waiting for fucking season to kick off.
But they're either history or science teachers. I think we had science teachers that were coaches too.
But I remember I was super interested in World War II, and it was time for us to talk about World War II. And he said, all right, chapter 4, here's a worksheet, answer the questions. And I was like, this is horrible.
So it's all about Mikey.
Man, why you put that on the screen? Not shit. We'll talk, Pastor. We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll see.
You just gotta hear my you gotta hear me. You gotta hear my side of the story, Pastor.
Mikey, you realize that less than 48 hours from now, we're going to be fucking high-fiving each other like a couple of idiots?
Oh, we're going to be in line at the dispensary.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then we'll be...
then we'll be high-fiving each other.
We should try the high 5. 5 blunts in 5 hours.
Oh, I don't know if I could do that.
I definitely
yes, I can. Who am I kidding? I'm like Michelangelo with pizza when it comes to that shit.
Oh, and we're making you eat pizza for your little jokes that you've been making. You and Ben. You guys are eating deep dish when you get here. Y'all had nothing but smoke for Chicago style pizza, calling it lasagna. You didn't stop anybody.
I didn't do any of that. Don't lump me in with them.
You didn't stop them. You didn't stand up for our pizza. You didn't defend us,
sorry.
Neil.
Am I the insult police now?
Can I add something else here real quick?
Uh-oh.
Sure. So in addition, I do have a little bit of academic credibility. I also spent 5 years as a pizza chef.
Me too.
Chicago style pizza is a legitimate art form that should be respected. It's
he needs to come every
fantastic.
Week. Every week we should have Michael on.
Now, New York style pizza is better, but Chicago style pizza is still really good.
They won't even call it pizza. They call it cake lasagna. They call it all kinds of names.
Cake lasagna.
Because of the layers.
I can't, Mikey. I can't eat it.
What you mean?
I can't. It'll kill me.
You're lactose intolerant, or
no. Something like that with like that much tomato sauce and stuff like that. Forget it. And to the cheese, I'll be
plugged up.
Wait. Oh yeah, that. I can't do that much cheese.
I will have to eat an entire fucking bottle of these things.
Yeah.
And it still won't do anything.
We'll have to do hot dogs then.
Yes, that I'm all over.
Ooh, Chicago dogs, yes. Oh my gosh, I love pizza.
I do too, but it hates me.
We always talk about food here. I should have warned you.
No, I'm perfectly fine with that. Yeah.
Midstream, we're just like, man, what's open?
Hear my stomach right now. We're poor. There you go. See.
If either one of you ever make your way down to Savannah, I'll treat you to the best New York pizza in the South.
Michael froze.
Oh, can you see me?
Yeah, he's good for me.
Good.
I think Neil froze.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
All right.
I just subscribed to your YouTube channel, and the link is in the chat. So everybody, let's get him over 9,000 or 900. 900 is a good first score.
Not that big. Yeah.
I'm almost at 2,700. It's pretty good for some slack-jawed Canadian yokel.
Hey, you're not just that, but you're our that.
It's like half as smart as Paula Gia, if that.
So we need
he ranked way higher in Canadian popular YouTubers fucking website or whatever. I was like 1,000 under him. Like, fuck you, Paul. I'll get you this weekend, mister. Are you listening? Paul, I know you're listening. I'll get you this weekend.
Just hand me that list, Neil, when I see it, and then we'll just send out the bots. Just start taking them out one by one.
Taking them down. So IQ figures he's going to make it to better.
Yes.
Hopefully, because he can have the extra bed since you don't want it. So.
It's a thing. It's a whole thing.
I know. I get it. I know other people like that, so I totally get it. He doesn't want me to see him naked. Anyway, so I'm kidding, dude.
No, I'm talking about pasta right here.
Oh.
I just saw that. Okay.
I was one of Mikey's history teachers. So what, you taught Mikey history? I don't understand.
Feet up on the desk. He had some hippie sandals on. Didn't even have no kind of professional dress.
604, not an imbecile. All right. Well, thank you for the high praise there. Tons of mice. So, Michael, you said you're good for the after party.
Yes, sir.
Now, we usually take a bit of a break between the two, so it gives you a chance to grab I got to freshen up my lemonade and have a quick whiz or something, and then smoke and whatnot, and then we'll get into that. So it'll be about 15-20 minutes or so. So it's a little bit of time.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure, man. Pleasure. Great to meet you and chat with you. It was awesome. Thank you guys out there in chat land. Appreciate that you guys are here. And thank you, Anton, for I saw the super sticker. It's bright red. It was blinding me, for fuck's sakes. But thank you.
Sticker.
Super sticker. I'm losing my voice. That's not good. And all my amazing patrons, thank you guys. I couldn't do this without you, so thank you for everything you do for the show. You're amazing people. And don't forget, guys, I have a wish list full of Lego. So
Go buy
I can't seem to stop buying. But anyway, yes, Kyle, you're late because it's the end. But that's okay. I'll give you a slug in the shoulder when I see you on the weekend, buddy.
I feel fine.
But we're doing the after party. So if you guys want to be involved, just let us know. And we'll get you a link and you can hop in there and meet Michael and have some questions for him. You can ask him. All right.
We're going to get nerdy in this after party. I can feel it.
We get super nerdy.
Where's Sweet at? We're going to talk history for the next hour and a half. Buckle up, everybody. This is going to rock.
All right, guys, like I always say at the end of the reviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
See ya.
What's on